whenever I hear an individual describe AI as like taking over a job or the world, I think that they're missing mark there, because AI is a tool that we create, humans created, right? So you can't replace a human when you create it. But I love that you mentioned that it's an assistant on steroids, and recruiters, we have so many jobs into one role, and that you really do need an assistant. Yes, you have a scheduler from rec ops, that's fantastic, but who's managing your day-to-day in the role of a recruiter? So I love that you mentioned that it's more of an assistant, because we're on the same page there.
Before we start the show, I have a quick question for you. Is your resume stuck in the rejection pile? At Resume Assassin, I create powerful resumes that showcase your skills, experience, and achievements, getting you noticed by recruiters. I'll also optimize your LinkedIn profile, transforming it into a magnet for opportunity. Visit resumeassassin.com today and take charge of your job search. Visit resumeassassin.com. Welcome to Resume Assassin presents Recruiting Insider, where I create a safe space to have candid conversations with recruiters and LinkedIn thought leaders. This podcast promises to inform, entertain, and inspire. Shaniqua Brown, welcome to Recruiting Insider.
Thank you so much for having me today. How are you?
Good. Shaniqua is the founder of Elevated TA and co-host, yes, of the From Illumination to Innovation podcast. She leverages her big tech and private sector expertise to transform public sector hiring. As a thought leader and former professional cheerleader, she champions innovation, empowerment, and public service and talent acquisition. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of humanizing AI in recruitment. So Shaniqua, tell us just a little bit about your own career story and how did you get where you are today?
Thank you so much, Mary. And I've been in recruiting for over a decade, and I got my start in recruiting agency. I don't know if anyone listening or if you've ever worked in a recruiting agency, but it's all about smiling and dialing. So I got my start in recruiting agency for about 4 years. And I remember sitting in my cubicle and I was Googling like jobs at Google. I wanted to be a Google recruiter at this point because I felt like I learned everything I needed to learn. And like, okay, I'm ready for something new. I want to work in-house. And I saw the requirements for the Google recruiter, and I just printed them out on my company with the company printer and pinned it on my cubicle. And that was something I was striving for.
Goals.
You walked past my desk, you knew what I wanted.
Yep. So, and it's not to be here.
And I just thought, like, man, I didn't have the experience that they were looking for. At that time, Google was hiring tech recruiters, just tech recruiters, And so I was supporting like the healthcare revenue cycle at the agency, and I moved to Austin, Texas. When I moved here, I went through a life, something personal in life, and I was at brunch with my girlfriends telling them, I think I may need to move back home to Tampa because this isn't working out. I'm not going to be able to afford to live in Austin. And this is, by the way, this is in 2018. I did not think I was going to be able to afford to live in Austin on my agency salary. So at that point, one of my girlfriends, I think at the time she was working at Amazon, she goes, we live in Silicon Hills. You can definitely get a job with a tech company. Just turn on your LinkedIn and get this together. So it was a recruiter, shaking a recruiter and saying, you can make this happen. So I turned on my LinkedIn that I was actively looking for a new role. A recruiter reached out to me about a contract at Google. And this contract at Google was a healthcare, to support their healthcare and life sciences vertical. And I come from the healthcare revenue cycle background. So it was kismet. My experience worked. I interviewed with the team. I got the role, and that has honestly just been my experience, my career, just being in the right place at the right time, setting goals and a vision for myself. And from Google, I went on to I work at, Meta on a contract. I worked for a few startups, and I just had an itch of, I want to take on a new challenge, and I want that challenge to be something where I put myself forward. And I started Elevated TA. So that
Yeah.
just a
Wow.
dream, an idea brought me here to this point.
Wow. It's amazing how everything in life just seems to happen for a reason. That's happened to me throughout my career too, where I'm like, man, I don't think I'm going to make it in something, or, I interviewed for a position and didn't receive
Yeah.
the offer, but then everything just seems to kind of
Hmm.
fall into
And
place.
even when you don't get the offer, right? It's honestly something better for you that's actually meant for you,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Every single time, it's, at least in my own experience, it's been
Hmm.
better. Even in the moment, if it doesn't feel like it, when I look back 5 years ago, I'm like, thank
Right.
goodness. This is exactly, this is exactly where I need
Yeah.
to be. So, could you explain what humanizing AI in recruitment actually means and why it's an important topic today?
Absolutely, Mary. I actually presented Humanizing in AI at Social HR Camp in Austin this past May. And humanizing AI in recruitment to me means integrating the tool AI into the hiring process, ultimately to enhance rather than diminish the human element. And it's about leveraging AI strengths like efficiency and like data analytics while ensuring that we still have the human elements like empathy, we have fairness, and personal judgment. That needs to remain central. And this topic is crucial today because as everyone's using AI, from individuals to corporations, it's becoming more prevalent, right? And we need to ensure that we don't lose sight on the human touch that makes recruitment a genuinely personal and impactful experience for the candidates and the organization.
Yeah, I love thinking about AI not necessarily as a replacement for recruiters, but more like an assistant on steroids, maybe.
Yes.
Instead of replacing the actual human, it's like it's all about using those
Hmm.
AI tools, like you said. Use those tools to make the process more efficient and in some cases even more
Hmm.
fair. And I think that you can do this in a way that still prioritizes the human experience, both for the candidate and the
Yeah,
recruiter, right?
100%. And to me, whenever I hear an individual um, describe AI as like taking over a job or the world, I think that they're missing the mark there, because AI is a tool that we create. Humans create it, right? So you can't replace a human when you
Yep.
create it. But
Yeah.
like I love that you mentioned that it's a assistant on steroids, and recruiters,
Yeah.
we have so many jobs into one role, and that you really do need an assistant. Yes, you have a scheduler from rec ops, that's fantastic, but who's managing your day to day in the role of a
Yeah.
recruiter? So I love that you mentioned that it's more of an assistant, because we're on the same page there.
Yeah. So could you dig a little bit deeper into what are some of the critical benefits that AI
Oh,
offers?
oh my gosh. Every recruiter out there, AI offers significant benefits in recruitment. Firstly, improving efficiency, automating the repetitive task, resume screening, initial candidate assessment.
Yeah.
We all know those repetitive tasks. So true. They're near and dear to the role.
Yeah.
Um, and this actually allows recruiters to focus on more strategic initiatives, right? And
Yeah.
I'm actually going to read this. I wrote down this stat. Are you familiar with Infosys? So the
I am.
IT
Yep.
consulting firm, right?
Yep.
They implemented AI in their hiring process, and they reported a
Yep.
60% reduction in manual screening time after implementing AI. So
Wow.
imagine all the 60% of your time is given back to your recruiters. Secondly, AI enhances candidate matching. using the advanced algorithms and analyzing large data sets. And Google actually used predictive analytics, and they have improved their employee retention by 25%.
Wow, that's
And the
amazing.
last, and I'm sure there's others, but I want to give you my top three. The last benefit is like the AI driven chatbots, like MebeBot. So you can use AI driven chatbots that can enhance your candidate or your employee experience. So they can get immediate responses to questions that may be more prevalent in the organization.
Yeah, it seems like it can just automate a ton of tasks. Like you said, I mean, resume screening and scheduling, things that just are tedious and take a
Right.
ton of time out of your day. If you can automate something like that, I mean, do it because it's going to make your life so much better. And it's also going to help you be able to evaluate those candidates a little
Mm-hmm.
bit quicker, too,
Right.
right? And I think that I've read a lot of articles on AI and recruiting lately because it's something that really is fascinating to me. And I've seen some articles that have said that it can also analyze resumes based on some predefined
Mm-hmm.
criteria, right? So this can actually eliminate some of those unconscious biases that creep into the human decision making process. And I actually just released an episode a couple of weeks ago around the psychology of interviewing, and we discussed some of those human biases. So if we can eliminate
Uh-huh.
some of those using AI,
Mm-hmm.
even better,
And
right?
and I think this also helps with requiring the hiring manager and the recruiters and the interview team to work together to collaborate,
Yeah.
because you have to establish what
Yep.
are the criteria that we are going to assess the candidates against, and we need that before we go assess the candidates because so we can implement this in the AI.
Yeah.
So I think that
Yeah.
this tool is going to help not only the assessment process, but also driving the collaboration between recruiter and a hiring team.
Yeah. It can improve the entire candidate
Yes,
experience in that
yes,
case.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So, despite some of these advantages to there's also some concerns or potential
Hmm.
drawbacks to it. So, what are some of the main risks or challenges of using AI in recruitment?
So, as a humanist, I'm a human first. I am a social advocate, so this part is near and dear to my heart and something I want to make sure that we remain cognizant of. So there's several risk factors and challenges, and one major concern is bias, right? Because
Yeah.
AI systems can perpetuate existing biases found in the training data. Now, most people know about what that Amazon had to scrap their AI recruiting tool because it showed bias against women. And the reason it showed bias against women is when they were training the data set at the time, tech was heavily male skewed. So they were feeding and training the AI system with resumes that had male names. So when a
Oh.
a woman's resume would come through with a woman sounding name, they would be rejected. So bias, that's something that's really huge there. Another challenge is um, the transparency in the decision making process. So
Yeah.
we don't know how AI is making decisions, and that
Yeah.
could lead to mistrust among candidates that are going through the process,
Yeah.
right? And that could negatively impact your employer branding. Another one that comes to mind is the over reliance on AI. And when we over rely on a tool, especially AI, we're now diminishing the human element of recruitment, going back to
Yeah.
empathy, fairness, and personal judgment. There was a study that found that more junior level employees when they were unfamiliar with the result, instead of digging in deeper into the finding that AI provided, they would just go with it, um, and it could be wrong. Whereas a senior
Mm-hmm.
level employee, they're more tenured in the space, they have more understanding of what they're doing, what the job entails, and what they're looking
Yeah.
for. They were less reliant on AI. In the same example, if AI gave them
Hmm.
information, they if they saw that something was off, they would look further into it outside of AI. They would do more
Mm.
research within the intranet of the company or ask a peer. They would do
Yeah.
more, and then also highlight that it is incorrect. And then so I think it's important, to ensure that teams aren't over relying on AI, is to ensure that you have a strong mix
Yeah.
between in tenure on your team. And then the final risk factor here is privacy concerns. And they can
Mm-hmm.
arise because the AI tools, you're using a lot of data, right? And improper handling of the data could lead to data breaches and even misuse from the company. So transparency is going to be required here for the misuse of data.
Yeah. I want to kind of go back to one thing that you said about, we don't really know how AI is selecting these candidates. And that's kind of a scary thought, and I think that reinforces why the next point, why we shouldn't be so
Mm-hmm.
reliant on it, because it can actually give us information that's not accurate. It can give us biased
Mm-hmm.
information, like you said. Technology is definitely not
Right.
perfect. I think most of us know that. In AI, it's no different. It has
Mm-hmm.
its flaws, even though it can be incredible, it can be time saving. It can still give us information that just doesn't make sense. And the AI algorithms are just seemingly so complex. And so, sometimes it makes it really hard to understand how they do
Yeah.
arrive at certain decisions, especially
Mm-hmm.
about candidates. And it also does really thrive on data, like you said. So at Google, where they're giving it all of these resumes with male names. And so now it's spitting out any resume. If you have a female sounding name, you have no
Mm-hmm.
chance at all. I guess it kind of plays into my next question of how can companies really ensure that they're using AI ethically and transparently in their hiring
Yeah.
process?
So I do want to call out that Google was not the company; it was Amazon. Uh,
Sorry, it was Amazon. I was, yep, as I was saying that, I was like, actually, I think it's
as a
Amazon. Yep.
Zoogler, I want
Thank
to
you
make
for
sure.
correcting that.
um,
Sorry,
love you,
Google.
Google. Um, so I would say ethically, to use AI, companies should be transparent from the start and clear about how they're using AI tools and how candidates' data is being processed. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the EU and or UK, Europe requires like you to be
Hmm.
clear about privacy, like the data that you're using, as well as the state of
Yeah.
California. So in
Okay.
the US specifically, I'm curious to see like how companies are going to respond to like how companies would actually are using AI. Are they reporting that in California? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
data transparency is going to be very important, and this transparency builds trust and allows for accountability, right?
Yeah.
Because if I don't know that you're using AI in your hiring process, and there's a data breach with your company, I'm assuming that it's like whatever customers you have. I'm not assuming that my data
Yeah.
is tied into that as a candidate, you know. And then the
Hmm.
second is regular audits of the AI system to detect and correct biases. So, with the case of Amazon, imagine if they would have, every week or month or bi-monthly checked to see like, well, how like it looks. This is odd. There's 10 candidates that we hired and only one is a woman. Let's go back and dig into
Yeah.
what has happened here. Is it because of the AI tools that we're using? And this kind of post-mortem, recruiters already do, right? I'm sure you've done that before in the past when you're looking through your
Yeah.
pass-through rates data, and you're wanting to understand
Mm-hmm.
why these candidates are dropping off. Like, why do we have such a low pass-through rate? So the investigations, let's bring that into the usage of our new tool. And then this is super important, human oversight.
Mm.
I'm a firm believer that a tool should not make human decisions. So AI,
Mm-hmm.
again, should support but not replace human judgment. And companies can create a more fair and more effective recruitment process by combining AI's capabilities with human insight.
So where do you think the best what do you think that would be the best way to alert a job seeker that AI is being used? Is it right in the beginning before they fill out the application? Is it during the interview process itself? When's the best time for that?
This is the first time I'm being asked this question. Samir, this is a great question. Um, Thinking about it, for me, I'm thinking the employer branding is a great way. You know, the
Yeah.
perspective, the careers page, right? I know when I
Mm-hmm.
worked at
Yeah.
Google, our careers page informed candidates how we interview.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a great place to build that trust and credibility initially. As we're talking about the interview process, what you can expect, also stating that we include AI in these stages of the process. Um, I think that's important. I could empathize with the company view of potential backlash of more candidates possibly coming out saying I was discriminated against, but I
Yeah.
think that's par for the course because you and I are both recruiting professionals, and we know before AI was used in recruitment so heavily that candidates still
Mm-hmm.
felt like they were being, biased against. So I,
Right.
I believe that we should overcome that fear and then double down on the ethical use internally of AI.
That is an interesting point. I wonder if moving forward, like 10 years into the future, if there will be legal cases where employees who are interviewing are like, hey, I was
Mm-hmm.
discriminated against with this AI
Yeah.
tool, and they go after these employers. That's kind of an interesting thought that I hadn't really thought
Right. And
about
I,
prior to
I
this
honestly
conversation.
believe that would
Yeah.
be great because now we have new case law. And if AI is using data, then great,
Mm-hmm.
they can sweep that case law in
They
and,
can.
and course correct, like
Yeah.
I see,
Yeah.
I would view that as an opportunity for the tool, the company, and how they use it to become better. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe that's my optimistic view, and I'm not the company that's being sued, so I can have that view. But yeah, what do you think about that though? Like, where would you, as like, if you were a candidate, where would you want to see
Mm-hmm.
or learn that the company's using AI?
I like what you said about employee branding, like right on the careers page before I even apply to the
Mm-hmm.
position. I think it would be nice to know that my resume is being sorted by AI with a human overseeing it. So maybe, somewhere on the careers page where you can go a little bit deeper into what that
Right.
means exactly too, because I think a lot of us don't really know. We're like, yeah, AI is making it really streamlined for recruiters to sort and view all of these resumes, but what exactly does that mean? So maybe just some fine
Oh,
print there.
for sure. And I think that companies have figured out a way to share with their clients how they're using AI to make their
Yeah.
processes better for the customer, right? And I'm confident we can do the same
Yeah.
thing
Yeah,
on the candidate
for
side.
sure. Yep, yep, absolutely. So let's dig a little bit deeper into some of the practical steps that organizations can take to really balance AI's efficiency with the need to maintain that human touch in recruitment.
So I believe that there's several steps that we can take to balance AI efficiency with human touch. And the first one that comes to mind for me is AI can handle the repetitive the repetitive task and the data intensive task.
Yeah.
So I think allowing human recruiters to focus on building relationships with their hiring partners, the interview teams, the their peers, cross-functional groups, and understanding candidate nuances. Like that's where I see that like recruiters could then balance, you know. And then I think
Yeah.
ensuring that AI driven decisions are always reviewed by a human recruiter who can then incorporate the human elements, who can then use their human judgment, who can use empathy, because you may, recruiters often run into situations where maybe this person wasn't 100% of what we were looking for on paper, but they have these soft skills that make up
Yeah.
for it, right? So being able to review it,
Yeah.
a human to review, because we understand those nuances when hiring.
Yeah.
And it's important to train and upskill HR teams and recruiting teams, rec ops teams to understand AI's capabilities and limitations. That is vital. We can't
Yeah.
just implement a tool and then tell everyone to figure it out on their own. I mean, I'm confident that they will, but how will they? And
Yeah.
transparency, going back to that with candidates about using AI and the role it plays within the hiring process is essential because it's you want to under like with AI removing from the situation, candidates deserve the right to understand how they're being evaluated so they can prepare for the interview just like the company prepares for the
Yeah.
interview. You know, we understand what we're looking for so we can create interview questions so we know how to assess the candidates, right? So that is only fair. And then lastly, the continuous monitoring of AI and any updates to the system to ensure that they're functioning as intended. And this helps make it, you know, in all of these steps help make AI enhance the recruitment process rather than detracting from the
Yeah.
recruitment process.
Yeah, it really allows recruiters to focus on areas where they can actually
Mm-hmm.
enhance the entire recruitment process and really use some of these AI tools to make everything better. And I completely agree. I think that moving forward, companies are going to have to start investing in training their HR team and their hiring managers on some of
Mm-hmm.
these tools so that they can best use
Right.
them during the process. Yeah. So many of our listeners today, they're on the
Mm-hmm.
other side, right? They're job seekers. What should they be doing now to stand out as a top candidate, especially when these AI tools are integrated into the hiring process?
So this is my favorite question because I think that um, what I've seen recently is that folks are all like using the same um, verbiage on their resume. Like if I'm a sales professional, right? I feel like every sales professional has like the same resume, and that's and that's by design, right? They want to make it through
Yeah.
the resume screening, and I don't fault them for that.
Yeah.
But what I share
Yeah.
with folks, like any job seekers that I come across, is to well, first start with yourself. Who are you? What do you possess? What value do you like? What are your dreams? What are your core values? What are your aspirations? What's your value add? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And then once you sit with that, then frame your resume as such because we have if you have all of the same resumes, we're just feeding AI. This is what a resume should look like, you know? And then as a recruiter, when I'm looking at a resume, I'm reading this is like an employee branding. They're, you know, it's their branding.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to get to know you, who you are, what you're doing, what you're looking for. So if this role aligns, fantastic. If I see that maybe in your resume this role could be too junior, I'm gonna tell you about it. But I think to stand out is to be unique, be yourself,
Yeah.
know who you are and what you have to offer, and then that will also help you like curate a list of companies or roles that you want to look for versus spraying and praying. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so I
Yep.
think to actually in recruiting agency days, we call this cherry picking. You know, you want to cherry pick the roles that you want because now you know who you are being selective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you have to kind of think of yourself as a product and you're trying to
hmm
sell that product. So what's your unique value? What's going to make you stand out for that position? And try to figure out how to frame your resume around that. And the other thing that I like to encourage job seekers to do is really think about what challenges that employer is
hmm
facing and how they could step in and solve that challenge. What unique skills do you bring, whether it's a hard skill or a soft
hmm
skill? And how can you step in and solve something that your potential supervisor is losing sleep over,
absolutely,
right?
Mary. And I love that.
Yeah.
And a candidate can do that, a job seeker can do that when they're
Yeah.
selective about what kind of role they want, what companies they want to work for. I met someone who applied to over 1,000 jobs, like 1,000 different companies, 1,000 jobs. And I
Jeez.
go, if they like, I love your approach because that is very thoughtful. You are obviously invested. They could not do that for 1,000 companies. Not
No,
at
you
all.
can't. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
I love that.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, there are AI tools in the job search that where you basically it's automating hundreds and hundreds of applications. So it's customizing your resume and
Mhm.
sending it out to hundreds, thousands of different positions that you may or may not qualify for. And so this is, a little bit off topic, but it affects the recruitment process and, that inundation that these recruiters feel day in and day out, especially over the last year where the
Mhm.
market's been just so incredibly competitive. Now they have these AI bots on the other side, on the
Mhm.
job search side, that are spray and pray all of these resumes, spraying and praying and spraying and praying, and they may not even qualify at all for the position, yet these bots are sending their
It
applications in.
is a colossal waste of that individual's, like everyone's time.
Yeah, everyone's time. Yeah, take your time, figure out what your value
hmm
proposition is, and figure out a way to stand out. So, what are the top three takeaways from our conversation today?
Top three takeaways. One, AI can really enhance recruiters, like a recruiting team's life, the workflow. And let me say that again. So, top three takeaways: AI is a tool. AI it will help enhance the recruitment process for recruitment teams. It's important to upskill the hiring teams, the recruiting teams that are using it, and it's important to monitor these tools as well. And then lastly, AI should not replace the human element and the human selection of your candidates, but it is there to help.
So, yes, use the tools, but make sure that you're providing the training that the recruitment team needs and you're continuously
Mhm.
monitoring it to make sure that it's flowing well. I love that. So, what are you up to now and where can we find you on social
So,
media?
with Elevated TA, we are transitioning to support government, public sector, and the federal contracts. I am a American citizen and taxpayer, so I am very driven to ensure that we have reduced time to hire in the government space. I want us to remain a leader in politics and the economy. So, how can we do that if we are competing with the private sector for the best talent or egregious time to hire? So that's what we're doing right now. We're transitioning from the private sector to the public sector, bringing our prowess there. And your listeners can find me on LinkedIn at Elevated TA, or you can type in my name, Shaniqua Brown, and on TikTok and Instagram at The Talent Strategist. And my website is elevatedta.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on
It
today,
was wonderful.
Shaniqua.
Thank you so much for having me today, Mary.
Thanks for listening. I will be releasing episodes every Monday, so be sure to subscribe on the platform that you are watching this, give it a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time.